From the moment her parents announced the arranged marriage, Eleanor felt as if the walls of her world were closing in. She wasn't against love, nor did she despise the traditions her family held dear, but something inside her screamed that this was wrong. The man they had chosen, Victor Hale, came from one of the wealthiest families in the city. On paper, he was perfect, educated abroad, heir to a vast empire of hotels and resorts, and polished enough to charm an entire ballroom. Yet when Eleanor met him, his smile never reached his eyes. It was cold, rehearsed, the kind of smile that looked beautiful in photographs but revealed nothing of the man behind it. He spoke politely, yet every word felt like an order. He didn't ask about her dreams, her passions, or even her fears. He simply spoke of what he expected their life to look like, her role as his wife, her presence at his side for public events, her duty to bear heirs. Eleanor listened in silence, her heart thundering, knowing deep down that marrying him would mean silencing her soul forever. Her parents, however, saw things differently. To them, Victor was stability, security, and a golden opportunity. Her father reminded her of the family's fragile financial state, how the business had been declining for years, how this alliance could save everything. Her mother spoke of honor and reputation, of how fortunate Eleanor was to be chosen by a man of such stature. No one seemed to care about her opinion. Every protest she raised was dismissed with gentle scolding or stern warnings. "You'll learn to love him," her mother insisted, her voice trembling with both hope and fear. Marriage is not about love, it's about endurance, respect, and sacrifice. But Eleanor's heart rebelled. She had always dreamed of marrying a man who would see her as an equal, someone who would cherish her laughter and cry with her in moments of pain. Victor was not that man. The engagement party was the first sign that everything would spiral out of control. The hall glittered with chandeliers, the air filled with the scent of roses and expensive wine. Guests whispered praises about how perfect the couple looked together. Eleanor, dressed in an ivory gown Victor had chosen, felt like a doll on display. When Victor leaned in to whisper in her ear, his words weren't of affection but of warning, "Do not embarrass me tonight." His grip on her waist was tight enough to bruise, his eyes daring her to disobey. She smiled for the cameras, her heart screaming in silence. But as the night stretched on, she noticed the cracks in his perfect facade. He drank heavily, laughed too loudly with women he barely knew, and spoke of Eleanor as if she were a trophy rather than a person. By the end of the night, she was convinced this marriage would destroy her. Her suspicions were confirmed days later when she stumbled upon Victor in the garden behind her parents' estate. He wasn't alone. A young woman stood beside him, her eyes red from crying. Eleanor froze in the shadows, listening as Victor's cruel voice sliced through the night. "You knew what this was," he sneered. "Do not come crying to me now. I'll be married soon, and you'll stay silent if you value your family's safety." The woman sobbed, pleading softly, but Victor only walked away, leaving her broken. Eleanor's stomach twisted with nausea. Whatever secret he carried, it was dangerous, and if she became his wife, she would be chained to that darkness forever. From that moment, Eleanor knew she had to resist, no matter the consequences. She tried reasoning with her parents again, sharing her fears, but they dismissed her words as dramatics. "Victor is under pressure," her father insisted. "All powerful men behave this way at times. You will learn to manage him." But Eleanor refused to believe that cruelty was something to be managed. She sought help from her best friend, Daniel, who had always been her confidant. Daniel's face grew pale when she told him what she had overheard. "You can't marry him, Eleanor," he whispered urgently. "If he threatens others now, imagine what he'll do when he owns you." The word "own" struck her like a knife. She realized then that she wasn't simply running from an unhappy marriage, she was running for her very freedom. Still, the wedding date loomed closer. Every gown fitting, every guest list meeting, every rehearsal dinner felt like shackles tightening around her. She played the role her family expected, nodding and smiling, but inside she was planning her escape. Victor's world was a gilded cage, and she was determined not to be trapped inside it. The problem was, Victor was far more dangerous than she had realized, and refusing him would ignite a storm that no one, least of all Eleanor, was prepared to face. The week of the wedding arrived like a storm Eleanor couldn't outrun. Invitations had been sent, guests had flown in from across the country, and the estate buzzed with preparations. But beneath the glittering surface, Eleanor's resolve grew sharper. She couldn't let herself become Victor's possession. Every night she lay awake, torn between the duty her family demanded and the fire in her chest that screamed run. Daniel urged her to escape before it was too late, offering to drive her out of town and hide her until the chaos settled. But Eleanor hesitated. Her parents would be ruined if she fled, and Victor's wrath was something she feared would reach far beyond herself. Still, she knew a choice had to be made. On the eve of the wedding, the mask Victor wore finally cracked. They were alone in the lavish hall after the final rehearsal, and Eleanor dared to tell him she couldn't go through with it. His smile vanished instantly. Do you think you have a choice? He hissed, his hand gripping her chin so tightly it hurt. Your family owes me. Without this marriage, they lose everything. And you, his eyes darkened, you'll regret crossing me. For the first time, Eleanor saw the cruelty that had only been whispered about in hushed tones. This wasn't just a cold man, this was someone dangerous, someone who used power like a weapon. She left the hall trembling, her decision made. She had to find a way out, even if it meant defying everyone she loved. Morning arrived with golden sunlight and the sound of violins as the guests filled the church. Eleanor, dressed in her wedding gown, stood in front of the mirror, her reflection staring back like a stranger. Her mother adjusted her veil, whispering encouragement, but Eleanor's mind was elsewhere. She replayed Victor's threats, the broken woman in the garden, and Daniel's words. As the doors of the church opened and the organ thundered, Eleanor's heart pounded, not with joy, but with defiance. Each step she took down the aisle was heavier than the last, the weight of expectation pressing her down. Victor stood at the altar, smiling his perfect, empty smile, but his eyes were still, warning her not to make a scene. When the priest asked if she would take Victor as her husband, time seemed to stop. Eleanor's hands shook, her throat dry, but the words came out steady, no. Gasps erupted in the church. Her father's face turned white, her mother clutched her pearls, and Victor's smile froze like shattered glass. I cannot marry this man, she continued, her voice stronger now. Because I know what he truly is. And so should everyone here. Murmurs filled the air as she revealed what she had overheard in the garden, the cruelty Victor had shown, the threats he had made. The crowd erupted, guests turning to each other in disbelief. Victor's mask crumbled, rage flashing across his face. He lunged forward, gripping her arm, but before he could drag her away, Daniel burst into the aisle, shoving him back. Chaos exploded. The guests screamed, the priest shouted for order, and Eleanor's parents tried to reach her through the crowd. But Victor, his pride shattered before everyone who mattered to him, lost control. You'll regret this, he roared, his voice echoing through the church. You and your whole family. Security rushed in, but not before the truth of his cruelty had already sunk into every guest's mind. Business partners whispered angrily, allies distanced themselves, and the empire Victor's family had built began to crack that very day. Eleanor fled the church hand in hand with Daniel, her gown dragging across the steps as cameras flashed wildly. She expected to feel fear, but instead, she felt a fierce relief. For the first time, she had chosen her own destiny. Her parents, though devastated and fearful of the fallout, eventually understood when the full extent of Victor's scandals began to surface. Women came forward with stories, businesses revealed his corruption, and soon his empire was no longer untouchable. Eleanor's act of defiance had set into motion a storm that consumed him, but it also freed her. Weeks later, as she walked through the quiet park with Daniel, she finally smiled, a real, unburdened smile. Everything turned into a mess, she admitted softly, but maybe it had to, so I could find myself again. Daniel squeezed her hand, his eyes full of something Victor had never shown her, kindness, warmth, and love. The mess had been brutal, but from it, Eleanor had built a new beginning. And this time, it was hers alone.